I've lived alone here for over 20 years, and art has become an important way of enriching my life of prayer. Now I'm going on a journey to see for the first time some of the greatest works of art in Britain. I hope to share the experience with you when I see them face to face. It might seem rather bizarre to choose Birmingham as a place for an art odyssey, because it's not all that well known for its visual arts. But as a matter of fact, there are not only one but two great art galleries in Birmingham, the Barber Institute and the City Art Gallery, and both have enormously great works within them. I had to weigh up which I would choose, and the Barber won by a whisker. This really is one of the best-kept secrets in the British art world. Poor Odyssey, tied to a wild bull and dragged to death by the two sons of Antiope because she insulted their mother. Two young men, Martini St. John, who knows what sorrow is, and Bellini's youth, who's been shielded all his life. But there's just too much here. And I've really come to see a remarkable portrait by a woman, Elizabeth Vigée-Le Brun. I have to start with this one, because it's one of my deepest held convictions that gender doesn't really matter in art. I defy anybody to tell from a work of art whether it was painted or created or sculpted by a man or a woman. But this seems to me an exception. Now, you see, what I find so charming and interesting here is that she's responding to this vibrant and delightful Russian aristocrat with her great mane of curly hair and her big bright eyes and her cloak held up so charmingly in front of her face. But she's responding to her, I think, very much as one woman to another, because I think she's picked up something you rarely find in the work of a male. And that's what I'd call a kind of farm boy quality about this beauty. She has a directness, a sort of vigor and a power that so often the male artist is rather worried by and tends to sort of prettify out. You know, they say in Africa that we're all born twins. If we're female, we've got a male twin. And if we're male, we've got a female twin. So here is Vigée-Le Brun showing both the twins, really, the physical one and the spiritual one, animating it. Now, there's a fascinating contrast to this painting just round the corner. Wait. Now, here we have the contrast. Woman painted by a man, Beccafumi. And before you start saying, oh, what a cliché, all that female flesh exposed for male delectation, look again. Look at Venus and her great muscular, beefy shoulders. Look at the arms swelling with power and that neck rather like a bull. I admit she has got a bosom, but a kind of minuscule bosom. He sort of pushed out what looks to be male flesh just to make it a little rounded. It's very much, in parts, a male body, rather muscular legs too. And yet, on top of this ravishing female face with that delicate little glitter of the earring. And, of course, a female-male comment being made. She's clad deliberately in this gown with its changing colors, and the little Cupid has a windmill to suggest that the female is variable and changeable. And what gives this picture its fascination is that somehow Beccafumi seems to be threatened by the woman. It's as if he really couldn't come to terms with the woman. She daunted him. She forced him to make her into a kind of pattern which he could then distance, make a rather crude comment on, she's changeable, and then, having put her in these lovely acidic colours and done his duty by her face, back away. But even if you don't like it, you should find it interesting. The woman painted by a male who doesn't like women. But of course, not every artist fears women. Mabuse, whose real name was Josette, he called himself this rather fancy Italian name because it sounded better, and he came from a town called Moberg. But this is one of the wonderful pictures in the gallery that I love best. It's the picture of what marriage ought to be. Hercules and Deianira, incompatible in many ways, yet so clearly intertwined, the way those legs blend together, the way those arms clutch one another. And yet notice, which is also important in marriage, is not just support they're giving, they're also giving one another space. That lovely hollow in the center, the lovely gap between the heads. They're looking at one another so tenderly. They're different, obviously. He's an enormously strong male, but notice that great iron club has been grounded here. Why? Because you don't need a club when you're in the presence of one who loves you. So this, to me, is what marriage ought to be. Two people loving, supporting, and helping one another to be what each was made to be. They don't try to change one another. They accept, and they love, and they support. Now, it's rare to find a picture of a happy marriage because it's so much more emotionally inventive to give a picture of an unhappy marriage. And I suppose really happy marriages aren't all that thick on the ground, but there is, in fact, added poignancy in this picture if you know the whole story. And that is that long ago, when they were younger, Deianira was almost raped. Hercules, great strong man, came and saved her. And as the rapist was dying, he whispered in Deianira's ear, "Dip my cloak in my blood, and if ever your husband needs help, give it to him." You can see she has not perhaps one of the great intellects of the world, though it's a lovely, loving face, and she believed this. And when Hercules was wounded and in trouble, she sent him the cloak, and of course it was a poisoned cloak, the cloak of Nessus, the centaur whom he had killed. And that poisoned cloak killed Hercules. Whereupon, heartbroken, Deianira died also. And I think something of that human tragedy is suggested here. The enclosing walls have an almost tomb-like effect, perhaps, and they look as if they're sitting on a sarcophagus. And he may be trying to remind us of the fact that you love till death do us part. And certain blessed people are never parted by death because they die together. Next week, my Odyssey ends in Edinburgh.